We're used to most high-end weapons coming from the US, but there's one area where even America falls behind. Not to China, Britain, or Russia, but Sweden. We're talking about self-propelled howitzers, and not just any howitzer, one of the best wheeled artillery systems in the world. Now, it's proving its worth on the battlefield in Ukraine. This is one of the best self-propelled artillery pieces out there.
Yeah, baby, yeah!
So what makes Sweden's creation stand out, and how is it performing on the front lines? Archer didn't have the smoothest ride to the battlefield. It all kicked off in 1995, but things moved at a Swedish pace, steady and measured. After a few years of tinkering, it wasn't until 2003 that Sweden's Defense Procurement Agency finally shook hands with Bofors to develop 2 prototypes. Fast forward to 2023, and Sweden has 48 Archers, 24 in action, and another 24 chilling in storage, waiting for a one-way ticket to Norway. But fate had other plans. Instead of heading north, 8 of them were sent to Ukraine, where this beast finally got to do what it was born for.
It is one of 8 Archer systems delivered to Ukraine by Sweden, and it has finally arrived for the first real battle test in the harsh conditions of eastern Ukraine.
So what makes this howitzer so unique? First off, Archer is the undisputed king of rapid deployment. In just 30 seconds, we set up, fire, and in another 30 seconds, we're packed up and moving again. Imagine a 30-ton machine that can stop anywhere, fire off rounds, and be gone in under a minute. A nightmare for the enemy. Catch me if you can. Second, it's all about automation. Archer was designed to be the world's first fully automated artillery system. The crew is only involved in reloading. Once we load up the rounds, we head out and the machine does everything else by itself. We don't step out. While moving, we get targeting data. As we approach the firing position, we input the target, and within 10 seconds of arrival, we deploy. Another 5 seconds to adjust, and we're ready to fire. At this rate, the next-gen Archer might not even need people, except for refueling. And third, the crew stays safe inside the armored cab, even in the heat of battle. The crew never has to leave the armored cabin. The shells are preloaded into a magazine, just like bullets in a rifle. On top of that, sometimes you need to hit a target instantly before the enemy can react. That's where Archer shines. Archer isn't just fast, it's smart. It has a built-in function that lets it fire 4 shells along different trajectories, but they all hit the target at the exact same moment. With this software, we can program it so all 4 rounds fly different paths but land at the same time. That kind of precision puts Archer ahead of most self-propelled howitzers in the world. It's setting the standard for modern artillery. Its predecessor? The legendary Paladin. These 2 machines serve different roles, but they have some similarities, like crew safety. Paladin's armor keeps its crew protected from incoming fire, and the M109 is well known for being one of the most comfortable artillery systems, with heating and air conditioning inside for long missions. But in the end, they're built for different tasks. Paladin is all about raw firepower, while Archer is a surgical tool for precision strikes. There were days we barely had time to reload before going right back into action. What's the most you fired in a day? My personal record? 192 rounds. Another big difference, the Paladin is tracked, while Archer runs on wheels. That changes how they're used in combat. And here's a twist, Archer might soon replace the M109 in the US Army.
What?
For years, the Army has been looking for a replacement for the M109, which has been in service since 1963. Their last attempt, the XM1299 from the Urka project, didn't work out. So they started searching for ready-made alternatives. Now, Archer, a howitzer nobody was paying attention to just a few years ago, is suddenly a top contender, the ultimate underdog story. And unlike the competition, it has a real combat experience. That's gotta be worth a like, right? But even Archer has run into some challenges in Ukraine. And it's not about the machine itself, it's about the people. Training to operate it is seriously tough. We trained in Sweden for 2 months. No days off. It was intense, but we had great instructors and translators. We got lucky with the team. Wake up at 6 a.m., breakfast at 7, then training, camouflage, driving, firing, maintenance. What they taught us in a month and a half normally takes 6 to 10 months. On the one hand, This means Ukraine now has some highly trained artillery crews, but on the other hand, there aren't many of them. If even one team is down due to illness or reassignment, it can affect missions. The same goes for maintenance. The fewer people who know how to service Archer, the harder it is to keep it operational. But the long-term upkeep is still a question mark. It's a tricky system. You have to understand it. You can't just... Before the gun commander could finish, a new target came in, and it had to be something big, because Archer has been firing less due to ammunition shortages. Since its specialty is taking out enemy artillery, this target was definitely worth the shot. So how bad is the ammo situation? It's critical. There aren't enough shells. And if Western aid continues at this pace, how much longer can Archer stay in action? There's plenty of work for Archer, but in terms of firing, we're running low. So you're firing less? Yeah, we're prioritizing only the most important targets now. The Archer takes out an enemy gun and moves to a new position. By the time the shell reaches its target, the Swedish howitzer is already on the road, maybe even getting confirmation of the hit from a safer spot. And let's be real, it never misses. But Ukraine isn't relying on Archer alone. If you want to see how Ukrainians are using Western weapons against Russia, make sure to subscribe. Speaking of heavy hitters, Ukraine is working on its own Archer-style howitzer. Meet the Bohdana, another self-propelled system making an impact on the front lines. Bohdana is a decent howitzer, but this one is just on another level. If you were firing from, I don't know, a 2S1 or Bohdana, would it be harder to hit the target compared to Mista B? Nah, this gun has better range. Depending on the type of shell, it shoots farther. When it comes to range, Archer has the advantage. It fires about 6 miles farther than Bohdana, which makes a big difference in artillery duels. And accuracy, that's where Archer truly shines. We've called Archer a surgical tool, while Bohdana is more like a sledgehammer. Usually, it hits the target with a second shot. The first one can be slightly off if the barrel isn't warmed up, but once it is, the gun fires consistently and accurately. But here's where Bohdana has the edge: production numbers. Sweden only built 48 Archers, while Ukraine is now rolling out 20 Bohdanas per month. That's a huge advantage in a war where Ukraine needs firepower across an extended front line. It's great to see our country finally producing weapons at this level. This gives us what we need to fight properly. Chances are, these two howitzers are working side by side in Ukraine's 45th Artillery Brigade, where the Archers were deployed. This brigade has come a long way since 2022. Before Archer, the 45th was the only brigade operating the massive 2S7 Peon, a 203mm monster with a range of 29 miles. Each shell weighs around 240 pounds. Cluster shells are slightly lighter. Now, Archer is taking over the same counter-battery role. Our job is counter-battery fire. We locate enemy artillery positions using drones, then take them out. Outdated equipment and ammo shortages forced the 45th to modernize. And now Archer is handling the brigade's toughest missions. I think they're not particularly happy about it. So, what can Russia throw at Archer? Their Peon, or the Mista S, Russia's most common self-propelled howitzer. These two have faced off many times in Donbas, but it's never been a fair fight. Take a T-72 tank, slap a big gun on it, and you get this: Russia's self-propelled howitzer. Its maximum range is just 15.5 miles, not even close to Archer's, making Mista an easy target. Take this May 2024 encounter. It was Mista's last ride. And here's another perfect Archer target: 3 Soviet-era D-20 howitzers lined up like bowling pins. A job for Archer's automated fire control system: 3 shells, 3 direct hits. A few minutes later, Russia's losses just went up again. Once Archer has its sights on a target, the hit probability is nearly 100%. So, what do we take away from this? Archer outperforms most self-propelled howitzers in range, speed, mobility, and automation. It's easily one of the best, if not the best, artillery pieces in the world. Its only weakness? Production numbers. With just 48 in existence, Archer isn't ready to become a global artillery powerhouse, but we'll be watching its future closely, and making more videos about it, of course. Now, what do you think? Which howitzer could surpass Archer in the future? Mista? Bohdana? Maybe the German RCH-155, which we'll be covering in an upcoming video. Drop your pick in the comments.
This machine is a real workhorse on the front lines. Yesterday, I hit about 13, maybe 14 targets. But the Russo-Ukrainian war might be both its first and last time in combat. We're talking about the Polish self-propelled artillery system, the Krab. It was not only the first NATO-caliber howitzer delivered to Ukraine, but also became one of the most numerous artillery systems in their armed forces. But does quantity mean quality? And do Ukrainian Krabs have a future? When these machines showed up on the battlefield, Ukrainian gunners were ecstatic, and it's easy to see why. After dragging around old Soviet towed guns or wrestling with the flawed M777, the Krab looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. Its tech and automation were a revelation. The Polish Krab from 2019 has performed incredibly well in combat. It's saved us many times. Super accurate, reliable, especially the suspension system, the electronics. I mean, I'm speechless. Best navigation I've seen. And comfort? Electric kettle, heating, cabin air circulation, air conditioning, you name it. The Krab quickly became a star. Not just in the media, but among the troops for how well it actually performs. But it wasn't just the Krab saving Ukrainians. Ukrainians helped save the Krab. Before 2022, the Krab program was small-scale and struggling. Orders were limited, and its future was uncertain. But Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine changed everything. Poland handed over a significant number of Krabs to Ukraine, which not only gave Ukrainian forces a much-needed boost, but also proved the Krab's effectiveness under real combat conditions. The Krab's journey to battlefield maturity wasn't exactly smooth. The first prototypes were built on the UPG-NG chassis, itself based on the Soviet MTS tractor and the PT-91 Tvarde tank. That chassis turned out to be unreliable, micro cracks in the frame, engine problems with the S-12U, and a general headache of delays and technical issues. Add funding problems, and the whole project was teetering on collapse. In 2014, Poland made a smart move and partnered with South Korea's Samsung Techwin to supply the K9 Thunder chassis. That decision gave the Krab program a second wind, and by 2015, the updated version went into mass production. Ironically, the Polish part of the Krab today is mostly the electronics, but thankfully, they're excellent. The fire control systems are fast, intuitive, and accurate. Back in the day with Soviet gear, you'd be hunched over this massive book, the fire table. You'd spend 5 or 10 minutes just crunching the numbers to figure out how to fire one shot. Then, you'd fire blind in the general direction, wait to see where it hit, and adjust. It was all guesswork. These systems? Way easier. They're automated. All the fire tables are preloaded into the system for every type of shell. It does the math for you. Just enter the coordinates and let it rip. Back in the day, Soviet M777 crews had to prep for each shot with paper fire tables and manual calculations. Krab, on the other hand, has all that baked into the system. The Polish SPG uses a digital ballistic computer that automatically accounts for shell type, temperature, air pressure, and barrel wear. With an M777, it can take 5 to 7 minutes from calculating to actually firing. With a Krab, just 30 to 40 seconds from stopping to the first accurate shot. That literally means by the time a Soviet M777 crew finishes their math, Krab has already fired and driven off. Give this video a like. It tells YouTube it's worth showing to more people. But are these features enough to make Krab stand out among the other SPGs used by the Ukrainian armed forces? Krab has 3 main competitors in Ukraine's arsenal: M109, AS90, and the PZH-2000. M109, the all-time American artillery classic, Ukraine mainly uses its upgraded variants. It's got a shorter barrel, which limits its range to around 20 to 30 kilometers. The upside? It's widespread, easy to maintain, and logistics are simple. But in terms of accuracy and rate of fire, it falls behind more modern systems like Krab or the PZH-2000. PZH-2000, meanwhile, is the most high-tech and the most high-maintenance. This German howitzer has an advanced fire control system, a firing rate of up to 10 rounds per minute, and a range over 40 kilometers, but it also needs frequent servicing, is sensitive to harsh field conditions, and has limits on sustained firing, all of which became clear in Ukraine's intense battlefield environment. AS-90, the British SPG, actually shares a lot with the Krab. In fact, Krab uses the AS-90 turret, but most British AS-90s still use older chassis with limited lifespan. Their range is up to 30 kilometers. They work well for Ukraine, but they're not typically deployed on the hottest parts of the front. Their age catches up quicker than newer systems, so Krab ends up being a golden middle ground, reliable, accurate, and mobile enough. Not as refined as the PZH-2000, but not as aged as the M109. But Krab's main problem lies elsewhere. We'll get to that in a minute. Because first, let's talk about the real deal, blowing up the enemy. The Krab is always ready to strike. If the system is on and the weather is fine, give it a minute or two, and we're good to go. Krabs are what we call big boss artillery. These are serious guns for serious men. When you're sitting there at battalion level correcting mortar fire, and they tell you, hold up, the Krabs are joining in to drop 2 or 3 shells. It's like getting a reply from the girl you've crushed on your whole life. And now, it's time to drop those 2 or 3 shells. Your subscription tells YouTube this channel is worth watching. Tap subscribe to support us. But firing from this machine is not just about boom and hit. There's this function, MRC. We can fire 4 rounds into one target zone, and they all land at the same time. And that's not even peak performance. The commander of the 40th Brigade once proudly shared a jaw-dropping stat. In a minute and a half, we fired 15 rounds, like it was a machine gun. But wait, there's more. Here's a fun fact. Never step on my mistakes again. And if you ever visit a crew firing 155mm shells, don't ask where they keep the shell casings. Because surprise, there aren't any. There's no shell casing for 155mm. The propellant burns up entirely, pushes out the shell, and that's it. The whole charge gets consumed in the process. No one's counting Krab's total confirmed kills, but the sheer rate of fire speaks volumes. Some barrels on the front have gone way past their service limits. The Poles said it was impossible to fire that much through one barrel. For instance, in Poland, their upper limit per barrel is 2,500 shots. Before I came here, I checked. My barrel had fired 470, but one of our guns here, 7,200. Yeah, 7,200. They ended up putting that gun in a museum, and one of the reasons Krab racks up that kill count, this beauty, Excalibur. Krab can fire not just regular 155mm shells, but also precision-guided rounds. Excalibur has a range of up to 50 kilometers and an extremely tight deviation. Co-developed by the US and Sweden, it can destroy a target with pinpoint accuracy, often with just one shot. We fired it a bunch of times, not just me. I actually trained in Germany on Excaliburs. These are high-precision rounds that hit hard. The deviation from target? Maybe 3 to 4 meters. They're insanely accurate. Only downside is they can be jammed by Russian electronic warfare. Because yeah, they rely on satellite guidance. Ukrainian artillery crews have been actively using Excaliburs in the Kursk region, where Krabs play far from a secondary role. With Russia now receiving military aid from North Korea, it was this very howitzer that became the first to take out their weaponry. But that didn't happen in Kursk. It happened in Ukrainian Donbass. Our commanders told us we were hitting a Soviet Pion, then later said it was a Koksan. They look pretty similar. Big barrels, you know? When they're camouflaged, it's hard to tell what gun it even is. Despite their impressive battlefield record, Krabs have a serious problem, one that could significantly hurt Ukraine's future defense capability. See, the Krab is something of a Frankenstein's monster of Polish defense manufacturing. Its chassis is South Korean. From the K9 Thunder, its turret comes from the British AS-90. The only thing purely Polish is the electronics and onboard software. And as you might guess, repairing this thing is no walk in the park. That's why Poland has decided to switch entirely to the Korean K9 system, which only makes it harder for Ukraine to maintain the Krabs. In fact, the Krabs received from Poland are one of a kind. They're no longer being produced, and upgrading or replacing them in Ukraine will be a serious challenge. Repairs more and more often involve cannibalizing damaged units, which will gradually shrink the total fleet and deepen the problem over time. And let's not forget, this is still a war. Krabs are a high priority target for Russian forces, who are doing everything they can to spot and destroy these howitzers, especially using Lancet drones. They're coming in constantly now. One week, we had 3 Lancets hit our old position. Ukrainians are doing their best to protect the Krabs from aerial attacks. The main threat to this Krab, as well as other artillery systems, is the Lancet. That's why we've put this chain link mesh over it. It's called a lattice fence, and it helps prevent a direct hit from a Lancet. And in most cases, it works, but not always. According to open source data, Ukraine has lost around 30 Krabs, either destroyed or severely damaged. This is all that's left of our little Krab, the one our allies gave us. There were 50 or 60 shells inside when the Russians scored a precision hit. Only the turret survived. Such losses can't be blamed on flaws in the machine or crew mistakes. Unfortunately, they're inevitable under the kind of intense combat Ukraine faces, and the Krab is working non-stop. The Polish people stepped up and delivered their Krabs to Ukraine exactly when they were needed most, and the system has proven itself completely. Not a single day off. We're working constantly. In the hottest phase of the war, these machines are irreplaceable. But the future of the Krab remains uncertain. It's unlikely to become the primary artillery system for Ukraine, and the number of Krabs will only shrink, not just from battlefield losses and wear and tear, but also because Poland is transitioning to a different platform. Still, despite everything, the Krab keeps fighting and destroying the enemy. We've got targets, we've got the will to fight, and we'll keep going. We'll crush the enemy to the very end. Like this video and tell us in the comments, what topics should we cover next? We'll pick from the most liked ones.
Fire! Self-propelled howitzer Bohdana is striking Russian positions. The result? Nothing left but rubble. This is Ukraine's first 155mm artillery system, firing NATO standard shells with deadly accuracy. But is it really as effective in this war as it seems at first glance? We had a situation on the firing position where the guys were using the loader to extract a shell, but the belt got stuck. And in combat, when you don't have time to take it apart and fix it, it can make things a lot worse. It could even lead to tragic consequences. Get ready, as Ukrainian artillerymen are about to spill the unfiltered truth. The good, the bad, and the explosive about this beast of a howitzer. Right now, Bohdana is the only modern artillery system in the world being built in the middle of a full-scale war. It was originally manufactured in Kramatorsk, eastern Ukraine, but after Russian Kh-22 missile strikes, production relocated to a secret location. According to President Zelensky, Ukraine's defense industry can now produce up to 20 Bohdana self-propelled howitzers each month. Smash that like button if you're impressed by Ukraine's resilient military-industrial complex. Since its creation, Bohdana has been mounted on 3 different chassis: Kraz, M777, and Tatra. All 3 have been battle-tested in this war. Here's what a Bohdana driver thinks about them. On the highway, when we're relocating, it can go up to 50 miles per hour. In Ukraine's fast-moving battles, speed is crucial, and Bohdana delivers on that front. The best thing about this gun is that it's wheeled. It can fire quickly and relocate. This maneuverability is what keeps the crew alive. With high mobility, Ukrainian gunners can strike Russian forces when they least expect it, increasing their chances of taking out more targets. We can sneak in, fire off some rounds, and get the hell out of there. Once the mission is complete, the crew can leave the firing position in comfort. Here's how one crew member describes the ride inside Bohdana. Bohdana is like a Mercedes, a really smooth ride. A solid chassis isn't just about comfort, it's about keeping the crew alive. Because, make no mistake, Bohdana is a high-priority target for the Russians. I think it's their dream to record a direct hit and take out a Bohdana. We've caused them a lot of trouble these past months. Russian drones are constantly hunting it down, keeping Ukrainian artillerymen on high alert. We got a call from the observation post. Enemy drone overhead. Time to move before a Lancet locks onto us. Here's how the crew, who take Bohdana into battle almost daily, describe the armored capsule. The armor, the thick glass, being inside an armored vehicle is a huge advantage. It won't save you from a direct hit, but at least it protects against shrapnel. And they're right. One time, a Russian Lancet kamikaze drone hit Bohdana's windshield dead on. But the armored capsule held strong, and the crew walked away unscathed. After some repairs, the howitzer was back on the front lines, and the challenges kept coming. What goes around comes around. Bohdana rains fire on the Russians, and in return, they're constantly trying to take her down. Just recently, we had a close encounter with some Russian shrapnel. With their lives on the line, the crew had to abandon the howitzer and retreat. But once the danger passed, the driver went back for it. Here's how he remembers that night. Getting out was brutal. Shells were still coming down, and they were watching us. I had to go back at night to get the vehicle. One of the tires was blown out, and we had no way to change it, so we just drove on the flat. Another major threat to any vehicle in this war is mines. We doubt Bohdana could withstand a direct hit from an anti-tank mine, but smaller ones? That's a different story. It might just save the crew's lives. They've done everything to ensure the crew survives an explosion. It's armored, the seats have safety belts. When it comes to protection, it's built really well. We're always showing how armor keeps soldiers alive. Hit subscribe so you don't miss more intense frontline stories. But armor isn't Bohdana's only strength. Let's take a closer look at its biggest advantage, the 155mm gun, fully developed and produced in Ukraine. Its stated firing range is 26 miles with a high explosive shell and up to 31 miles with a rocket-assisted projectile. Hitting those numbers requires near-perfect conditions, but it is possible. Our longest shot was 25 miles, and it hit the target. Typically, Ukrainian artillery use the first round to adjust their aim, and the second one lands right on the target. When we talk about accuracy, sometimes the second shot lands within 10 yards of the target. The biggest challenge for crews operating the first two versions of Bohdana was the lack of an automatic loader. That issue has been fixed in the latest version, but before that, gunners had to load every shell by hand. Here's how one of them remembers it. If you load 100 shells in a day, your back turns to stone. You come back feeling like your whole body is locked up. Reload speed directly impacts the number of rounds fired, which, in turn, determines how many enemy targets are destroyed. Here's what one Ukrainian artilleryman thinks. If there's no need for adjustments, we can fire 4 rounds per minute. If corrections are needed, the intervals between shots are 2 to 3 minutes. The type of shell also plays a huge role in taking down targets. Different rounds pack different levels of firepower. It depends on the type of 155mm shell. Some have shrapnel that spreads up to 1,300 feet, only 650 feet. Western shells have proven highly effective in this war. Ukrainian gunners who fired hundreds of them confirm this. We mainly use high explosive fragmentation rounds, but when we got cluster munitions, we used those too. Both types have about 90% accuracy. The Russian-Ukrainian war is brutal and relentless, so artillery crews never run out of targets. But their main job is to cover their infantry during offensives. We work every day, every hour, covering our troops. The moment the enemy starts moving or launching an assault, our infantry immediately calls for artillery fire. As they say, an artilleryman's sweat saves an infantryman's blood. When no assaults are taking place, gunners focus on taking out Russian supply depots and troop concentrations. We've hit ammo warehouses, fuel storage sites. As for enemy personnel, there's no way to count how many rounds we fired and how many of them have fallen to our hands. Sometimes, a single mission leads to an unexpected bonus. The most interesting moment was when we targeted their electronic warfare systems. Turns out, they had a self-propelled howitzer hidden just 50 to 100 meters away. We took that out too. Russian artillery and heavy equipment are also prime targets, making it much harder for them to push forward. We took out enemy guns, disabled a tank. It's counter-battery work. And of course, we keep hitting their infantry as well. Bohdana's long range allows Ukrainians to strike deep into enemy territory, disrupting operations and slowing Russian advances in key areas. We're not just hitting the enemy's front lines, we're taking out their rear bases and supply routes too. That's a game changer. One of the most unconventional uses of Bohdana happened during the artillery strikes on Snake Island before Ukraine's landing operation. The howitzer was mounted on a barge and fired directly from the water. It was strange floating down the Danube on it, but shooting? Totally normal. Ukrainians also tested their domestically made howitzer on Russian territory, using it during the offensive in the Kursk region. It's proving highly effective in the Kursk operation. Very accurate, very powerful. The results speak for themselves. With intense fighting along the front, artillery pieces like Bohdana are in constant use. Otherwise, the infantry would bear the full weight of the war. Easily 40 to 60 shots per gun per day. To ensure every shell lands where it should, Ukrainian crews pair Bohdana with drones for precision targeting. We fire based on drone feeds. The drone spots the target, sends the coordinates to me. I relay them to the battery, and after the shot, the UAV adjusts the aim. Regular maintenance is critical. Without it, there's a real risk the barrel could crack at the worst possible moment. To keep it in top shape, you have to clean it as often as possible. The more, the better. But it depends on how much firing we do. Right now, we'll clean it, do a scheduled maintenance check, clean the breech and sealing ring, and then it's ready for new targets. Compared to the outdated systems Ukraine once relied on, Bohdana represents a huge leap forward. The difference is massive compared to towed artillery, especially Soviet-era ones. This is our own 155mm gun, self-propelled, accurate, and long range. The upgrade is undeniable. The biggest leap is in the onboard electronics, which makes the crew's job much easier. Unlike Soviet systems, here you need to understand electronics and hydraulics. The gun commander and crew have to be familiar with all the readings on the onboard computer. And, of course, the speed of automated deployment is a huge advantage for modern self-propelled guns like Bohdana. From the moment we get the command gun to combat mode to the first shot, it takes 3 minutes. You can't do that with a towed gun. When compared to Western artillery, Bohdana still has room to improve, but it's on the right track. In terms of range, it's behind only the Archer. The Archer fires over 25 miles. Ours reaches up to 25 miles. If you want to learn more about how the American M109 or the Swedish Archer have performed in this war, check out the link in the corner. Ukrainians who operate multiple Western self-propelled howitzers have noticed that some of them have navigation issues. They joke about it, explaining how they still rely on old-school methods like a compass and aiming circle. Even if the satellites go down, we do everything the old way. We line up and fire. I've heard that Western systems sometimes struggle with navigation. We don't have that problem. We've got a compass and an aiming circle. The 2S-22 Bohdana is a solid artillery system that Ukrainians are putting to the test in the toughest battlefield conditions, and they're already improving it based on real combat experience. In this high-intensity war, it has strengthened Ukraine's firepower on the front lines. Most importantly, its 155mm shells can be produced in cooperation with Western partners. No need to scour the world for leftover Soviet 152mm rounds. Do you think NATO countries might buy this howitzer for their own artillery units? And which country would be the first? Poland, Lithuania, or maybe France? Drop your prediction in the comments.
You strap this on the barrel, and this on the donkey, and off you go for stronger stabilization. Serious gear, 1 donkey power. Nope, you didn't mishear that. Ukrainian artillery crews are using the Italian OTO Melara howitzer, one that can be towed by a donkey. Animal lovers, relax. Unlike the Russians, Ukrainians don't drag poor animals to war. Donkeys here have been replaced by pickup trucks, and even old Soviet Ladas. It's well balanced. It doesn't push back. Pulls just fine. Sure, dragging it uphill in a Lada might be tricky, but on a flat road, the Lada can tow it no problem. But hey, is there really room in modern war for a gun that's over 70 years old? Let's break it down. Italy built over 2,300 of these howitzers, which have served, and still serve, in the armies of about 30 countries. Why so popular? Simple: mobility, reliability, and firepower. Let's take it step by step. But first, hit that like button. You're here anyway, might as well help boost this video. Back in the 1950s, OTO Melara got a contract from Italy's Ministry of Defense to develop a light mountain howitzer. The goal? Give mountain troops a solid artillery piece for alpine combat. At that time, Italian units were still stuck using Czechoslovak Skoda 75/13S. And the first thing that came to mind looking at those was, how old are you, Granny? Not without reason. The Skoda was a World War I design, with a pathetic range of just 6 kilometers. When the fresh Melaris rolled out, they were immediately put through brutal field tests. About 1,000 rounds fired, then shoved into a cryo chamber at -34°C to see if they'd crack. And to test mobility, they even dropped the howitzers from planes. The grand finale, simulated mountain assaults, and the Melara nailed it. This 105mm howitzer became a real bestie for the gunners. Sure, it's been around for 70 years, so fair question. Shouldn't it be in a museum by now? Well, Ukrainians beg to differ. Their combat experience with these guns even impressed the Italian instructors.
Вони просто в шоці, як ми на них.
They, the Italians, are just in shock at how we're using these things. They don't run them like we do. This crew operates just 5 kilometers from the front line. And ever since they got their hands on the Melara, Russian troops started sweating a bit more.
Працюємо на різну відстань.
We work at different ranges. Could be 1 kilometer, could be 2. And we can fire at the full range it allows, from 2 kilometers to 5 kilometers depending on the sector. To silence Ukrainian artillery and smash fortified positions, the Russians keep dropping heavy bombs into this sector. If your howitzer becomes a priority target for enemy aircraft, that says a lot about your crew's accuracy. Could be over 10 times a day, or maybe none at all. Depends. But lately, they've been sending these guided bombs almost daily. When you've got guided bombs flying at you, sitting around and waiting isn't much of an option. So Ukrainian crews tested just how fast they can pack up the Melara and bug out to a new position. According to the original Italian design, this howitzer can be broken down into 12 parts, each weighing up to 130 kilograms. You could airlift it with a UH-1 Huey, fit it into an M113 APC, or if you're old school, strap it to a donkey. Sounds neat, but how's that in the real world? Turns out Ukrainians can break it down in minutes. 10 minutes. And if it's urgent, we've got strong guys. You just grab it and go. Roll it out. Totally doable. We'll pull it. If relocating isn't an option, the Melara's compact size makes it perfect for camouflage. A few camo nets, some branches, and it basically vanishes from enemy drones buzzing overhead. First off, it's really hard to spot from a drone. Plus, we hide it well. That's a huge advantage. Second, it doesn't flash. No muzzle signature. We can fire day or night. Other guns give off a huge flash. This one doesn't. So we can work 24/7. That no flash firing, massive plus. Keeps the crew alive and makes each shot invisible at night. The British L119 howitzer has the same feature. We've got a whole video about it. Links in the top right corner. At first, not everyone was sold on the Melara. Some gunners were skeptical. They were used to Soviet-era artillery, then gradually shifted to NATO gear. Here's what they figured out. We were on the fence when they first switched us. We used to run the M777. Then they gave us this Melara. Size-wise, it's 5 times smaller. But once we got into the fight, she proved herself. Way more accurate, easy to handle, very mobile. She made us fall in love with her. The Melara packs a 105mm gun with a barrel length of 1.4 meters. With standard American M1 shells, it can reach up to 10.5 kilometers. With rocket-assisted projectiles, it stretches out to 13 kilometers. And in the wide-open Ukrainian steppe, this little gun barely gets a break, thanks to constant Russian assaults. We fire about 100 to 150 shells per gun per day. The main job of this howitzer is to cover Ukrainian infantry holding the line in the trenches right on the zero line. The best shots are when the enemy doesn't even get close and catches a big caliber present halfway in. In countries that are not at war, the cannon is demonstrated at shows for civilians. On the Ukrainian front, it works non-stop. New targets for the gunner appear around the clock. The intensity is crazy. When they start storming, we jump in to support our infantry. We start taking the Russians apart before they even reach our positions. And if they try to hide in dugouts, well, we hit the dugouts too. Even with Melara's age, Ukrainian gunners are pulling off some serious miracles, like wiping out Russian assault groups with just a few well-placed shots. That kind of precision isn't just about the hardware. It's about the experience these guys bring to the fight. One crew here managed to hit a moving target and stop an enemy push cold. First shot, caught them with shrapnel. Third shot, killed all 3. To get that kind of accuracy, they pair the gun with a drone. The UAV scouts, spots, and corrects their fire. Having eyes in the sky really multiplies your chances of wrecking the enemy. We were working against infantry. Around 10 guys moved out. We gave them a little scare so they wouldn't come closer, hit their dugout. At first, we clipped them. Then they scattered and ran for cover. The drone caught it all, and we nailed the dugout. One neat thing about the Melara is that it can fire 105mm American M777 HEAT shells. These are your best friends when you need to punch through over 100mm of steel armor and stop an assault with heavy vehicles. Just recently, we fought off another assault, took out 11 vehicles, captured a tank, and the Russians scattered into the tree line. We watched them run, then cleared them out right there. The gun's rate of fire is 8 rounds per minute, but after 30 minutes of constant firing, that drops to 4 rounds per minute, and after an hour to 3 rounds per minute. To speed things up, Ukrainians prefer firing straight from the gun's trigger handle.
Там секунди, то бо шнурка треба відбити.
When you shoot from the handle, it's instant. From the lanyard, you have to step back. Pull the rope, it's a hassle. But with the handle, you just stay at the gun. Much faster. According to Infodefensa, 20 Ukrainian servicemen completed Melara training in Europe. Their instructors were from Spain's 32nd Mixed Artillery Regiment based in Almeria. Here's where it gets interesting. In European armies, an OTO Melara Mod 56 crew is 7 people. So, to fully train for service, you'd need 56 soldiers. 2 options here. Either those 20 trained gunners came back and taught their comrades, or Ukrainians are running these howitzers with smaller crews. Judging by field footage, the second option seems much more likely.
Це чистка клину затвору.
This is how we clean the breech block. Here we service the barrel, adding oil so the recoil system works properly. And, of course, cleaning the muzzle brake, which loses its efficiency when it gets fouled up with soot. So, what's the reason for this? Lack of personnel, or just skilled soldiers who don't need extra hands? Honestly, it's a bit of both. A complex issue, but either way, they're making it work. While checking the gun's maintenance, we noticed another smart design feature. Italian engineers really thought this one through. They made it safe to extract a stuck round if the gun jams. Sounds like a small thing, but it says a lot about how much care went into the design. Here's what it looks like. There's a special stopper there. You screw it in. The fuse is inside. In the Russia-Ukraine war, both sides are facing an ammo shortage. Neither side's factories can fully meet frontline demand. The Russians are pulling shells out of North Korea's stockpiles, while Ukraine gets supplied by Western partners. For now, there's enough 105mm bores for the Melara. But for how long? It's enough for now, but we always want more. Give us more, and we'll shoot 24/7. For now, it's okay, but it'd be great to have a bigger stockpile, something reliable to fall back on. Another challenge with these howitzers is spare parts and barrels. Right now, Ukrainian artillery crews are still making jokes about the age of the Melara, but long-term finding parts for old guns is going to be a serious headache. This gun was made back in '96. Still works like clockwork. An old one, but a reliable one. You take care of it like a girlfriend. More attention, better quality care. In the end, it's not just about the age of the gun, it's about how it's used. With skilled crews and smart tactics, even legacy weapons can shape the battlefield. The Melara proves that precision, mobility, and discipline still win fights. Your likes and comments about these guns really motivate us to keep making new artillery videos. Which gun should we cover next? Drop your pick in the comments, and we'll choose from the most liked ones.
Just take a look at this beauty. The British L119, now being used by Ukrainian forces, has become the main rival to the Soviet D30. But is Western artillery really fit for a war where the barrel barely gets a break from constant firing? Ukrainian gunners have their doubts. We went to Germany for 6 days of training. We asked, what if we fire 200 shells a day? What should we do? How does the barrel hold up? And the American says, pour water on it. Then he comes back half an hour later and goes, actually, we've never fired that much. We might have told you something stupid. British and American forces usually use their L118 and L119 howitzers to support light infantry or air mobile units. The main difference between the two is the type of ammo they fire. L118 uses 105mm shells that only Britain keeps in stock, but L119 can fire rounds that are available across many NATO countries. That's a big reason why Ukrainian artillery crews received L119s. Because it's way easier to find enough ammo when you can tap into the stockpiles of dozens of partners, instead of relying on one country. And in the war against Russia, the rule is simple. The more shells artillery has, the safer the infantry feels. You feel the weight of that responsibility, especially if you've served in the infantry. You know how important it is, when the enemy's coming at you in force, to have support behind you. So giving Ukraine the L119s was a pretty smart move. Smash that like button if you agree. It helps boost the channel and lets us make more content like this for you. But having enough ammo is only half the battle. Can the gun barrel actually take the stress it's under on the battlefield? The American instructors who trained Ukrainians weren't sure, but the reality turned out to be a lot more interesting. My crew's always lucky. We usually fire 50 rounds a day, sometimes up to 100. Our record? One gun fired 206 shells in a single day. That was during the Wagner breakthrough. We were covering our battalion and holding them off. On paper, the L119 howitzer can fire 6 rounds per minute for the first 2 minutes, then 3 rounds per minute during sustained fire over half an hour. But what about real combat? Well, pretty impressive actually. During the Falklands War, British forces managed to fire up to 400 shells a day from a standard L118. So it's safe to say the L119, which is basically the same gun with NATO ammo, holds up just as well. In terms of performance, the L119 is often compared to the Soviet D30 and the two S1 Gvozdika self-propelled gun, both in the 122mm category. Sure, those pack a bigger punch, but their barrels? Not even close to the condition of a well-kept L119. The big advantage is the barrel. That's where the accuracy comes from, and that's the biggest strength of this howitzer. And when shells are limited, accuracy is a huge deal. We can hit targets much more effectively than with the older Soviet stuff. Those worn-out D30 barrels just couldn't deliver the accuracy we needed for fortified positions. Of course, there's a catch. The 105mm shell used in the L119 isn't as powerful as a 122mm one, which can carry up to 4 kilos of explosives. But still, we take one precise hit over a dozen shots that miss. Soviet barrels may rain down more shells, but that doesn't always mean better results. One underrated perk of the L119? Its low silhouette. The smaller size makes it harder for the enemy to spot. And if things get hot, the crew can pack up and vanish in no time. It's fast to set up, fast to pack down. The whole process is just smooth and easy. Also, and this might surprise you, the L119 is way quieter than its Soviet counterparts. That means less ringing in your ears and a lower chance of giving away your position. It's just super quiet. You almost can't hear the shot. It doesn't rattle your skull like the old Soviet gear. Even the Russians have taken notice. Though, maybe not in the way they'd like. Sometimes it's actually kind of nice hearing their intercepted comms. It's coming from somewhere, but we have no idea where. At night, when drones are buzzing above the front lines, artillery positions are easy to spot thanks to the muzzle flash that lights up with every shot. But here's a surprise, the L119 barely flashes at all. You can imagine the starry-eyed look on Ukrainian soldiers' faces when they found that out. I used to work with the D30. The L119's got a few advantages. The D30 gives off a huge flash at night, but this British one, barely any. You just can't see it in the dark. It doesn't give away your position. Another big plus? The L119 is noticeably lighter than its Soviet counterparts, a fact that logistic teams are very happy about. Hit that subscribe button if you want more stories like this. Real war, real gear, no fluff. Western armies usually tow it with trucks or high-mobility vehicles, but that's not all. You can sling it under a UH-60 helicopter, or even fly 2 of them at once with a CH-47. And if the chopper can't land, no problem. They can airdrop it with parachutes. Ukraine isn't doing large-scale airborne ops just yet, but artillery units still benefit from how easy it is to move these guns around with a Humvee. Fast, nimble, gets the job done. It weighs 1,900 kilos. The D30? Almost a ton heavier. This thing you can literally move by hand. 2 people are enough to spin it around. That weight advantage really shines in mobile defense. When Russian FPV drones are hunting you non-stop, or jets are dropping massive bombs in your sector, staying in one spot is just asking for trouble. How fast you move could mean life or death. We're just sitting there with the gun, the Humvee pulls up and boom, cabs incoming, that's it. Your life now depends on luck, or maybe an FPV spots the gun in the Humvee. That's a priority target for them. Distance from the front line used to mean something, not anymore. Thanks to FPVs, even rear positions aren't safe, and the D30's extra range doesn't count for much. Up front, there's only one rule. You're a target. If you don't want to get hit, hide well or move fast. I'd rather hit the enemy more effectively than sit further back. There's barely a difference between being 12 or 15 kilometers away. Those long-range FPVs hit D30s just the same, and they can hit our gun too. The L119 howitzer is pretty easy to maintain and doesn't give artillery crews much trouble. It rarely breaks down and usually only needs serious repairs after being hit by shrapnel. Which, let's be honest, can happen to anyone in this war. All we do is clean it and oil it. If something major breaks, we just send it back to the company. The L119 showed up on the front lines of the Russian-Ukrainian war back in 2022. Since then, they've been used both in defense and to support offensives against Russian positions. They're mostly used against infantry because it takes the shell 30 seconds to travel 10 kilometers, so it's hard to hit moving vehicles. We mostly aim at buildings, stationary equipment, troops, or clusters of enemy forces. But the more skilled Ukrainian gunners don't let that stop them. If drone operators give them the right coordinates, they're quick to fire even at fast-moving targets, like a Russian stormtrooper riding a quad bike. We've hit a Russian tractor with the howitzer, and one spring, we scored a hit on a tank, all moving targets. We've also landed shots on Russian ATVs and motorcycles. Since the start of the full-scale invasion, Ukraine's allies have delivered around 50 L119s to the defense forces. From day one, they were deployed to support airborne units on the front lines, but every gun comes with its own age and barrel wear. The more you fire, the faster the barrel wears out, and the less accurate it becomes. To speed up repairs and keep these guns in the fight, Ukraine's government teamed up with global defense giant BAE Systems. The company has opened a local branch to service the howitzers, produce spare parts, and even manufacture new ones. That's a big deal. It gives hope that towed artillery isn't ready for retirement just yet, and still has a major role to play in future wars. In fact, Ukraine's experience has already made NATO armies rethink their assumptions. Before Russia's full-scale invasion, many NATO countries had been gradually phasing out towed artillery in favor of wheeled and tracked platforms. The Cold War was over, armies were downsizing, and new doctrines were being written for smaller local conflicts. Western engineers also aimed to protect the crews operating these guns. That became especially urgent with the rise of counter-battery radar systems, which can pinpoint enemy firing positions with brutal accuracy. The idea was that an armored capsule would keep crews safe, but modern warfare introduced a new threat: drones capable of detonating ammunition stockpiles. And that forced a serious rethink of how towed artillery fits into the battlefield. Unlike big self-propelled systems, towed howitzers are compact, and that means easier camouflage at well-prepared firing positions. Their ammo is stored separately, so a direct drone hit is less likely to cause a catastrophic explosion. Meanwhile, crews can quickly duck into shelters, often dug and reinforced by the artillery teams themselves. Towed systems also have another key advantage. They're much cheaper and simpler to produce than self-propelled guns. That matters a lot during wartime, when you need to replace losses and equip new units fast. And in that context, the L119 stands out as a very practical choice. It's accurate, relatively affordable, and built to last. In short, it works. What topic should we cover next? Drop your ideas in the comments. We'll choose from the most liked ones.
These are the aftermath of strikes delivered by American HIMARS rockets. We always hit with sniper-like precision. Yeah, even if you think you've got balls of steel, a 227mm HIMARS rocket will strike them dead on. At first glance, it might seem like this equipment could be repaired or maybe scavenged for parts, but take a closer look. See those 180,000 tiny tungsten carbide fragments? They sliced through metal like it was paper. Every part of this vehicle is riddled with holes. The chassis, engine, fuel tank, transmission, even the truck's leaf springs, all shredded by the M30A1's shrapnel. This isn't just damaged equipment, it's scrap metal. And as for the enemy personnel, HIMARS is generous to its friends, like Santa with a bag of precision presents. But for enemies, surviving a hit from these rockets would require divine intervention. Seriously, it's like being hit by a celestial shotgun blast. Who could walk away from that? I first saw a fireball. Then, in an instant, the entire clearing was littered with bodies. I've never seen anything like it in my life. When this Russian soldier's comrades arrived at the strike zone, it was silent. Too silent. The kind of silence that only comes with death. That's the work of another HIMARS projectile, the GLMRS M30. Its cluster warhead carries 404 M101 dual-purpose submunitions, designed to tear through both armor and personnel. What's left after a strike? Dust, twisted metal, and no survivors.
Якщо не одна з
If it's not the most effective system on the battlefield, it's definitely among the top. The sheer power is astonishing. But what makes the American HIMARS so untouchable? Why can't the Russians neutralize it? The first standout feature, HIMARS boasts an arsenal of over 10 different types of rockets. That's right, no other MLRS in the world comes close. Which specific munitions are being sent to Ukraine remains classified, hidden even from the Washington Post. But don't worry, we'll lift the curtain a little. You've already seen the destructive beauty of cluster munitions and tungsten-packed warheads, but the first HIMARS strikes in Ukraine during the summer of 2022 pointed to a different payload altogether. Nearly all Russian targets hit in the first weeks of HIMARS deployment were 25 to 50 miles behind enemy lines. Many Russian ammo depots and troops were annihilated. In just a few days, around 20 major depots were obliterated. Most went up in flames, with their entire stockpile of shells and rockets detonating in spectacular fashion. These strikes were courtesy of the GMLRS with a high explosive warhead, tailor-made for such missions. But how did the Russians let this happen? It boils down to logistics. Russia relies almost exclusively on railways to supply ammunition to the front. The munitions are then stored in depots conveniently located near railway stations. Here's the catch. These depots have fixed and easily identifiable coordinates, and HIMARS rockets, guided by a 24-channel GPS receiver using ultra-secure communication links, don't miss fixed targets. Intel on depot locations is straightforward. Reconnaissance can track the trucks loading up munitions to supply frontline units, and then all you need to do is input the target's coordinates into the computer, press a few buttons, and launch the missile. Now imagine this. Loading these Russian depots takes hours, because, get this, Russian soldiers load ammo by hand. While they're sweating it out, satellites from every nation with eyes in orbit have all the time in the world to capture the scene. There's no way to hide this slow-motion disaster. And so, the depots go sky high. Sure, credit also goes to American satellites for pinpointing the targets, but HIMARS was the ace in Ukraine's hand during its first counteroffensive in eastern Ukraine. With the depots destroyed, Russians can't blanket our infantry and artillery with fire anymore. HIMARS fits perfectly into the maneuver warfare doctrine embraced by Ukraine's military. These systems can strike anytime, anywhere. We can execute missions on any terrain, in the field or on the road. It makes no difference. But here's the real kicker. The actual circular error probable for GMLRS turned out to be 2 to 3 feet, far better than the 23 feet guaranteed by Lockheed Martin. In other words, HIMARS rockets are even more precise than expected. That's a game-changing advantage. And hey, if you think that's impressive, hit that like button. This bold plan was born in Kyiv to liberate Kherson in southern Ukraine. The operation became the crowning debut of American HIMARS, and now you'll understand why it would have been impossible without these systems. Kherson was the only city on the right bank of the Dnipro River that the Russian army occupied in 2022. The Russians had dug in, building strong defensive positions and fortifications. Attacking these with infantry and tanks was near impossible. Why? The open terrain surrounding Kherson stretched for miles, offering no cover. Advancing across it was practically a suicide mission. To make matters worse, the Russian grouping in the area consisted of over 20,000 troops. For Ukraine to counter this force, they would have needed 3 to 5 times as many soldiers. Reserves they simply didn't have. But there was a critical weakness. All supplies for the Russian forces in Kherson had to cross a few key bridges. And this is where HIMARS stepped in, taking those bridges under relentless fire control. Hitting a bridge with an MLRS from 40 to 50 miles away is like shooting a thread with a crossbow. But thanks to the unexpected precision of GMLRS rounds, it was possible. The computer shows us when we're in position to hit the target. The commander gives the order, and we launch. However, it wasn't just the munitions doing the magic. Got a job, we're rolling out. HIMARS crews near Kherson worked non-stop for 37 hours straight. Ukrainian officer Koval told the Wall Street Journal about their grueling but crucial efforts. Putin's generals faced an impossible challenge, destroying the HIMARS launchers. The problem? They were like bees, constantly on the move.
Мобільність цієї машини прекрасна.
The mobility of this machine is fantastic. It can go anywhere, and on the road, it reaches very high speeds. That's why we were able to change locations so quickly. By mid-October 2022, movement across Kherson's bridges was almost completely halted. Ukraine used GMLRS M31 rockets with high-explosive warheads to achieve this. While these warheads couldn't completely destroy massive bridges, 200 pounds of explosives isn't enough to demolish such structures. The solution was simple. Instead of trying to obliterate the bridges, Ukrainians targeted the roadways, making craters faster than Russian engineers could patch them up. GMLRS rockets punched hole after hole in the pavement, day after day. And guess what? It worked. To avoid a complete disaster, the Russians were forced to retreat to the left bank of the Dnipro. Had they failed to do so, the war might have taken a dramatic turn, as most of the 20,000 Russian soldiers would have either been destroyed or captured. Putin lost face withdrawing his troops from Kherson, but in doing so, he saved his army. Meanwhile, Kyiv celebrated a victory that likely wouldn't have been possible without HIMARS. Ukrainians themselves acknowledge this.
Ми раніше воювали на
We used to fight with outdated Soviet-era weapons. Now we finally have modern, powerful systems that can lead us to victory.
Працювати на Хаймарсі.
Working with HIMARS is an honor for every member of our battery. Such precise and advanced equipment brings us closer to victory. By now, every Ukrainian knows the name of this American rocket artillery system. But you're probably wondering, why didn't the Russians shoot down the GMLRS rockets? Here's the thing, the Russians tried to intercept them from day one of the HIMARS mission in Ukraine. Footage from the Kherson operation shows Russian air defense systems launching interceptors, but all attempts to take down GMLRS rockets failed.
То якщо ти нажав, вона
If a missile is launched, there's a 99 out of 100 chance it will hit the target. That's because HIMARS is no ordinary MLRS. GMLRS rockets first climb to an altitude of up to 65,500 feet, then descend on their target at a nearly 90-degree angle, reaching speeds of up to 2,700 feet per second. Given the relatively short range of GMLRS, air defense operators simply don't have enough time to react. All they can do is watch it on their radar as it comes crashing down. For example, operators of the Russian Panzer S-1 system only have a few seconds to respond and fire, but even then, the system can engage only a limited number of targets at once, 4 within a 45-degree range and 2 within 90 degrees. And let's not forget, a HIMARS container holds 6 GMLRS rockets.
Координати можуть бути і на
The coordinates for all 6 rockets can be set at once. They can target multiple objectives, or all 6 can focus on a single target. On radar screens, 2 or more rockets appear as a streak instead of a point. Operators never know whether they're facing 2 GMLRS rockets or all 6. But what if 2 HIMARS units launched simultaneously? A tactic frequently employed by Ukrainians. For the Russians to reliably shoot down HIMARS rockets, they would need an incredibly dense air defense network. Achieving this is nearly impossible because such concentrated systems would themselves become juicy targets. Even when such duels do happen, they resemble a miniature war. Take, for instance, the Ukrainian attack on Kursk, a city shielded by dozens of air defense systems. The Ukrainian forces deployed a buffet of weaponry: Storm Shadow missiles, mauled decoys, harm anti-radiation missiles, GBU bombs, and HIMARS systems. The strike also involved Su-24 and Su-25 jets, 2 F-16s, 2 MiG-29s, and even FPV drones. The skies were packed. Now imagine the chaos on the radar screens of Russian air defense operators. How exactly this Ukrainian orchestra coordinated its efforts remains a mystery, but the operation managed to hit the largest communications hub in the region. The result? Even Russia's advanced air defense systems couldn't withstand a multi-pronged, diversified attack. To counter HIMARS specifically, the Russians sometimes resort to full-scale GPS signal jamming. But here's the catch: these powerful disruptions also affect their own troops. As a result, such jamming is limited to specific areas and short durations, making it far from a reliable solution for neutralizing HIMARS. This forced Russian forces to relocate their depots and command centers out of GMLRS range. Only then did the US agree to supply Ukraine with another powerful munition from the HIMARS arsenal, ATACMS, Army Tactical Missile System. If you think this should have happened sooner, hit that subscribe button. Here's the kicker. ATACMS takes HIMARS to an entirely new level, transforming it into a tactical missile system with a range of up to 186 miles. This isn't just an upgrade, it's a game changer. Imagine Floyd Mayweather moving up a weight class and still dominating his champion. ATACMS quickly earned a reputation as the ultimate slayer of Russian S-400 and S-300 systems. But what about other rockets in the HIMARS arsenal that have proven themselves in Ukraine? So far, we haven't seen the GMLRS-ER extended range rockets in action. These upgraded versions of the GMLRS can strike targets up to 93 miles away, nearly doubling the original range. We also haven't witnessed the new PRSM, Precision Strike Missile, which boasts an impressive range of 310 miles. These are expected to gradually replace MGM-140 ATACMS tactical ballistic missiles. Fingers crossed for their debut. Clearly, the full potential of the HIMARS system in Ukraine has yet to be unleashed. This is why the Russians are desperate to destroy the launchers themselves to take them out of the game for good. But that's easier said than done. First, Ukrainian crews are exceptionally well trained. Our partners took our training very seriously. Second, HIMARS systems primarily operate at night, swiftly changing positions after firing. Reloading the system takes just 5 to 10 minutes. With our speed, the chances of catching us are next to zero. Third, HIMARS is well protected. The launcher module and fire control system are mounted on a sturdy truck chassis, with the cabin and undercarriage reinforced with armored steel plates. This makes it capable of withstanding blasts from several pounds of explosives. So far, not a single HIMARS has been destroyed. Well, except for a few wooden ones. Wait, what? Wooden HIMARS? Yes. Ukrainians have been deploying decoy models in forests to confuse the enemy. It wouldn't be surprising if Putin is being briefed on their destruction. In reality, around 40 HIMARS systems have been delivered to Ukraine by the US since the war began. The exact number in active service or under repair is unknown. However, we've seen footage of a HIMARS damaged by a mine and sent back to the US for repairs. Notice how the wheel is blown off, but the cabin remains intact, meaning all 3 crew members, the operator, driver, and commander, survived. Here's another clip showing a Russian Lancet drone strike on a HIMARS after it had completed its mission. As we can see, the drone's 6.5 pounds of explosives weren't enough to destroy the system. This launcher is likely headed to the US for some treatment as well. The first possible destruction of a HIMARS occurred 622 days after they debuted on the battlefield. During that time, Ukrainians managed to destroy 767 Russian MLRS systems. Not a bad score, wouldn't you say? But is there anything in the world more advanced than this American rocket system? The Russian Uragan? The Chinese WS-2D? Or maybe the North Korean KN-25, which boasts a confirmed range of up to 250 miles? Drop your pick in the comments, and we'll create a head-to-head battle video between HIMARS and the weapon you choose.
We figured out how the Russians are managing to destroy American M777 howitzers on such a massive scale. Any guesses? It's decoys! Just look at these beauties. They even puff out smoke to make it look like they're firing. Russian Lancet drones dive at these fake targets like starving fish going after a shiny lure. The Russians are pulling out all the stops to track down and take out American howitzers. Hold it! Ready to fire! And it's no surprise why. First off, if our howitzers don't fire, our infantry's in for a tough time. Bernard Montgomery, one of the most famous World War II generals, once said that the harder the battles and the longer the war goes on, the more infantry depends on artillery. The war in Ukraine couldn't prove that more. Fire! Here's what a real M777 looks like in action. Ukrainian artillery crews lovingly call it 3 axes. But from a drone's perspective, good luck telling a decoy from the real deal. Hit that like button if you think these fakes are genius. Another reason why the Russians are so eager to hunt down the 3 axes is their incredible effectiveness. According to a brigadier general from the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces, the M777 howitzer has an efficiency rate of 80%, the best performance among all the artillery systems supplied by Ukraine's allies. Curious about how other Western artillery systems are doing in Ukraine? Check out our separate video on that. But what do ordinary Ukrainian artillerymen have to say about the M777?
Похибка в неї виходить до 3 метрів.
Its error margin is within 10 feet.
Якщо вже великий коректує.
We're lucky, we don't usually need big adjustments. Now, you might have heard arguments online claiming otherwise. Some say the circular error probable for the M777 is measured in dozens of feet at a range of 15.5 miles. For those unfamiliar, CEP is the radius within which 50% of rounds fired at the same target are expected to land. Apparently, Ukrainian gunners didn't get that memo because they're hitting much more precisely.
У нас йде робота без поправок.
When we fire without adjustments, by the end of the day, we usually have video confirmation of direct hits. Even with minimal corrections, we're talking 95% accuracy on target. The thing is, while expert opinions on CEP might sound reasonable, they often come from the comfort of a couch. Real-world practice shows a different story. And just look at this grouping.
З 3 пострілів
With 3 shots, we can take out 2 targets, both in completely different locations, on entirely different terrain. Still, we've analyzed the actions of Ukrainian M777 crews and think we've figured out the secret behind their incredible accuracy. And yes, that red button is part of the answer. But let's break it down step by step. First, despite the high intensity of the fighting, Ukrainian gunners stick to optimal barrel management. The M777 can fire 5 to 7 rounds per minute. But at this rate, the barrel will start to wear out after just 2 minutes. It's extremely intense. Several dozen M777 barrels overheated and had to be sent in for repair. Now, Ukrainians are careful to avoid this.
Лишнього не стріляємо. Якщо ми
We fire strictly at our targets. No unnecessary shots. If we deploy, we work briefly but effectively. Each barrel has a lifespan of approximately 2,500 rounds before replacement is needed. The 3 axes fires 155mm shells, and for most modern heavy artillery systems, a sustainable firing rate is about 2 rounds per minute. Stick to this, and your barrel will last until its scheduled replacement. But accuracy isn't just about firing discipline. Another key advantage of Western artillery systems lies in their ammunition, its quality and variety. That's the second reason behind their phenomenal precision. The M777 can fire any NATO standard shells, including high explosive, cluster, smoke, illumination, and even specialized mine-laying rounds. We use cluster shells against infantry or light vehicles. High explosive shells are also used on vehicles, and we hit bunkers with regular explosives. The maximum range of standard high explosive shells is 15 miles, packing nearly 24 pounds of explosives. For comparison, Soviet and Russian 152mm shells carry only 10.5 to 15 pounds of explosives, meaning Western shells are significantly more effective. For extended range strikes, special rocket-assisted shells are used, with ranges reaching 25 miles. These shells have an additional boost from a base bleed gas generator or a compact solid-fuel rocket motor. One standout is the M982 Excalibur, guided by GPS. In the early months of the war, these rounds sent shockwaves through Russian forces. An alternative to the Excalibur is the Precision Guidance Kit M1156. This smart fuse can be installed on regular 155mm shells, transforming them into precision-guided munitions. The PGK features a GPS receiver and fins that adjust the shell's trajectory in flight. These innovations in ammunition and firing strategies are what make Ukrainian M777 crews so devastatingly effective. The Pentagon recently dug up some M712 Copperhead-guided shells from the 1970s and handed them over to Ukraine. These were the world's first guided artillery rounds. At least 3 of these laser-guided shells were used by Ukrainians during the Kursk operation to take out a metal communications tower. We'll be keeping an eye on where they pop up next. Precision-guided munitions help Ukrainian forces conserve ammo, as fewer shots are needed to take out a target. However, these rounds are also dozens of times more expensive than standard shells, so they're reserved for high-value targets. On top of that, they allow for strikes on moving targets.
минулої зими
Last winter, we hit a Sansepec heavy flamethrower system.
в 22-му
I also remember hitting a tank from a distance of 14 miles back in October 2022. Yes, precision munitions can even hit an open window. Of course, the Russians use electronic warfare systems to jam GPS signals, but this is a never-ending game of cat and mouse. There's no permanent winner. Still, even the best and most advanced shells can't replace skilled personnel, which is yet another reason why M777s have performed so well in Ukraine. In the early months of the war, the US, Canada, and Australia delivered over 100 M777s howitzers and nearly 190,000 shells to Ukraine. There were concerns about how quickly these systems could be deployed, but training didn't take long. Experienced soldiers were sent to Germany, where they were trained by skilled instructors. They sent us to Germany for training, where American crews taught us. Before this, I worked with the Soviet-era D-10 for almost 3 years. I started with the Soviet D-20, then used a captured Russian M777, and now the 3 axes. Part of the quick learning curve may also be attributed to the simplicity of the M777. Most of the systems provided to Ukraine lack the automated fire control systems that enable sniper-like accuracy with standard rocket-assisted shells. So how do they manage without it? The answer lies in a clever Ukrainian innovation, the Kropiva combat control system, which integrates reconnaissance and fire control across different units into a single information network. According to NATO classification, this system falls under the C2 command and control type. Using the Kropiva system requires only 3 key inputs: the target's coordinates, the artillery battery's location, and the meteorological conditions. These are entered into a tablet with specialized software, and the firing direction and range to the target are calculated automatically. That's right, the Kropiva combat control system includes a ballistic calculator for the M777. Even the Pentagon can't quite wrap its head around how this was done without hundreds of millions of dollars in funding. So the Kropiva system is another big factor in Ukraine's artillery success. Now it's time to reveal the purpose of that mysterious red button. But first, make sure you're subscribed to our channel if you haven't already. It's a light switch. Insert 2 batteries and it illuminates the scales for nighttime use. Think this is trivial and doesn't affect the outcome? Imagine driving your car at night with no dashboard light. And what's that weird curved stick used for loading the howitzer? Turns out that's another important tool. Stay tuned for more on that. This is the standard tool for loading shells included with the howitzer. The curve is designed to make loading easier when the angle of fire is steep, like at 800 mils. We've highlighted these small details for a reason. Nearly all Ukrainian M777 operators have prior experience with Soviet-era artillery systems, which often lack such conveniences. That said, the M777 has its own quirks, some of which became apparent in Ukraine. It's delicate. You've got to clean it often and check everything carefully. In Germany, we covered theory, from barrel replacement to changing a wheel. But here we ran into weather issues. It rained, then it froze almost immediately. The first winter in Ukraine was a major test for the M777. Nighttime temperatures in the steppe dropped to -40 degrees Fahrenheit, causing seals to fail rapidly. Western instructors accustomed to operating the howitzer in hot climates had little advice to offer. However, Ukrainian gunners adapted. They began covering and heating the 3 axes using Webasto heaters from truck engines. After 2.5 years of use, Ukrainian mechanics have developed a unique expertise in repairing M777s, even those damaged in combat. Our howitzers have taken hits from Lancet drones, Grad rockets, and Krasnopol shells, but we always managed to fix them. We shared our knowledge with Canadian mechanics, and they were shocked at how much we know about the M777. If we can't repair something in the field, we send it to the factory. The M777's durability in combat is also tied to protective measures. Alongside the decoys you saw earlier, anti-drone nets remain effective against kamikaze drones. Against Russian counter-battery fire, Ukrainians rely on electronic warfare systems, laser detection sensors, which warn of guided munitions like Krasnopol, well-fortified positions, and frequent relocations. To date, we haven't lost a single M777 permanently. Another advantage of the M777 is its lightweight. Thanks to its titanium alloy construction, it weighs just 9,250 pounds. Allowing it to be towed by a light truck. The Russian M777, often considered its competitor, weighs 15,500 pounds, requiring a much larger vehicle for transport. The M777's success in Ukraine has been so notable that BAE Systems announced it's resuming production of howitzer frames and has signed a contract with the US Army. This raises an interesting question. Should the M777 be considered American, with 80% of its components made by American companies? Or British, given its developers' origins? Or maybe Ukrainian? After all, BAE Systems plans to repair and eventually manufacture the 3 axes in Ukraine. Let us know your take in the comments.